Okay, well, thank you, Kathleen. We'll move on to the second talk. Italo Lopez Garcia is also an economist within USC Center for Economic and Social Research, and he's going to be talking about health-related work capacity in older ages. Italo?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was just trying to set up everything too. Can you guys see my slides?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I was able to put them in, in my monitor separately from the computer, which I probably had before. So sorry for not doing the practice today, but thank you for inviting me to this conference. Today I'm presenting this work that is joined with Kathleen, who is here. Just presented Nicole Maestas from Harvard. This is called Work Capacity at Older Ages, and how that relates to labor market outcomes. So the motivation for this work is basically, well, I mean, it's pretty well known. The US population is aging, and age-related declines in health lead to premature labor force exit and also to increase in the social security disability insurance claim. So in a way, this is challenging the long-run fundability of social programs and Medicares and whatnot. But we also know that this effect of the labor force exit related to health, physical or mental health problems is more prevalent among individuals with less education. So there is a growing sense of inequality and basically perpetuate health disparities that we're interested. So this paper, actually, this is not a paper. This will be presented like an idea which has two applications. So there are two different papers, but it's highly motivated by inequality in health disparities, inequalities in health and in labor market outcomes. So basically, what the motivation is, a little is known about how health affects work-related functional abilities and how the interactions between work-related functional abilities and job requirements might help create the individual's work capacity. So that's going to be the concept today. We want to, in this paper, we propose a way to create a measure of work capacity based on the interaction between work-related functional abilities that the individuals possess and the interaction and the job demands that they face at work. And I will talk about two applications. Just very briefly, what does it mean to be able to work? We are conceptualizing a job as a bundle of tasks, which requires at least 3 inputs: knowledge, skills, and abilities. This is just an example for the case of a surgeon. This is coming from the ONET survey. You know, these are the tasks at the three most important tasks for a surgeon. And then which they also rate, the ONET also rates like the 5 most important knowledge aspects of this work, the 5 most important skills, and the 5 most important abilities. Although we're conscious that this is about, I mean, work capacity might be influenced by knowledge, skills, and abilities. In this paper, at least for now, we'll be conceptualizing work capacity as a health measure, capturing the interaction between individuals' own abilities with the abilities required to perform jobs. So, and we will include skills and knowledge later, but that's what I've been studying for now. So measuring work capacity is hard. Many people have tried it. Work capacity is not the same as actually working. It's a latent variable. So there's a robust literature trying to quantify work capacity, and it's quite telling. And actually show that there's significant work capacity retained by individuals even after retiring. However, all these measures are population level estimates of work capacity, not individualized. And what we're going to do in these two papers, it's like create individual measures of abilities. So we're going to collect data on individual measures of abilities that are harmonized to abilities required to perform jobs and estimate work capacity at the individual level. So our contributions are 4. First one, we developed this measure. In order to develop this measure, the second contribution is that we collect new data on functional abilities in the RAND Life American Panel Survey, the LP, which are already said that harmonized to the abilities required to perform, the 52 abilities required to perform more than 800 jobs in the US economy. We will then use this measure of, this measure of work capacity to describe how a measure of work capacity is able to predict labor market outcomes over and above health measures available in our data. And the second is we're going to examine how work capacity of individual has evolved in the last 2 decades due to changes in the nature of work. So 3 data sources. The first one is the ONET survey. Many of you probably know it. It just collects data on many different job requirements. One of them is that 52 ability requirements that are categorized across 4 domains: cognitive, psychomotor, physical, and sensory. It asks individuals. So this is basically interviewers go to the employers and ask about the importance of each of these 52 abilities for one particular job, and also the ability level that is required on a scale from 1 to 7. Gives examples, which are 3 anchors, so they can basically relate to real life experiences. We're going to use 2 versions of the ONET, the 2018 and 2003, in order to capture changes over time. And from the American and the life panels, and the new survey in the ALP, which is the American Work Capacity and Ability Survey that we collected in 2018. Basically, we are going to be asking the similar questions as ONET, not about the importance about a job, but what's their own level of ability on a scale 1 to 7, using the same ONET anchors, but the only difference that is not going to be related to a job or to the job or any job. Basically, we will be asking them to assess their own level of ability, so we can compare that with the different levels of abilities required to perform jobs. This is an example of how the ONET works. So the first part is how important an ability, in this case, arm hand steadiness, is to perform a particular job on a scale from 1 to 5. And the second panel is what the level of arm hand steadiness is needed to perform your current job. And here is like the scale from 1 to 7, and give like 3 different anchors or examples, so the respondents can situate themselves. So we reproduce the same thing in the ALP. So the same scale from 1 to 7, and we give exactly the same 3 examples. The only key difference is that we phrase the question in a way that is not related to a particular job. So we have like this individual own assessment of their ability. So this is some results from the ALP sample. Basically, what we find is that the level of abilities, the right-hand side is the kind of like the zoomed in graph shows that in general abilities decline over age, but the decline is not super large. It's more for the physical own abilities, but it's much less for cognitive own abilities, which is kind of like it's kind of what we see is like the declines in abilities are not so sharp. But when we compare the decline in the level of abilities with the abilities required to perform jobs, actually what we see in the data, basically here we're already comparing ALP with ONET data, is that the responded levels of abilities in red are much larger than the abilities required to perform jobs that are coming from the ONET. So I'm going to skip this slide because it's like a lot of equations, but basically what we do here is like we're going to compute 2 measures of work capacity. One's going to be the occupation specific work capacity, which is defined as the fraction of a job's requirements individual can do over 52 abilities. How many of those abilities the individual has. And the second measure is total work capacity, is going to be defined as the fraction of all jobs in the economy an individual can do, or alternatively a measure of potential earnings. So I don't think I have time to go to these equations, but basically we're going to be using 2 measures of 2 alternative measures of work capacity. One based and the individual needs the 100% of the abilities required to perform the job in order to be created occupation. By the second one, it's a little bit more generous. We just use assume that the individual is credited with occupation if he or she has at least 91% of the ability required to perform the jobs. So we find that our measures of work capacity are really related, are related with health. So the correlations are in the right direction. As I said before, because the change in abilities, right, it's not over time, over age, is not so sharp. What we find is that actually that translates into measures of work capacity that are not so declining over age, which basically means that the age-related decline in abilities appear inframarginal. And that reflects into these patterns by age in work capacity. So with this measure, we perform 2 things. Our first application is that we relate our measure of work capacity to labor market outcomes, and we find that actually our measure of work capacity over and above health predicts people work more, are more likely to report working past age 65 to 70, like with the two different measures. For example, with the strict measure, then an increase from 0 work capacity to 100% work capacity in terms of the jobs individual can do will increase probability of working longer by 6% using the strict measure and 10% for the generous measure. Overall, in different measures of labor market outcomes, we find that our measure it's predictive. And the second application is basically to see how work capacity has evolved with age, over time. And this is what I just wanted to show you. So what we find when you look at the ONET data, just looking at the ability requirements, we find that changes in job demands have very unevenly distributed across worker by education. So this is an increase in current job demands for all groups, but the increase is much larger for individuals with less education. And this is a decrease in physical job demands between 2018 and 2018, but the decrease is much larger for individuals with higher education, which means that basically, in a way, individuals with less education are being have been disadvantaged in terms of how occupational job demands have evolved over time. And this has translated, using our measure, translated that actually two different measures of work capacity, like the fraction of jobs individuals can do, or the potential earnings, have increased by education level and has increased more by workers with more education, but potentially did not decrease or even potentially shrunk for individuals with the lowest education level. So I'm going to end up there because I'm already past my time, but I'll take questions now.
Any questions for Italo?
Do you know if there are studies of how COVID-19 has changed job capacity, like long COVID and stuff?
No, that's a super interesting question. I didn't say that. Yeah, we would love to look at how job demands have changed before and past COVID, because I do think that it will change. I'm not aware of any study right now. I'm sure there is one, but I'm not aware of any study looking at that. But it's definitely part of our agenda to keep looking at this potentially unequal changes in job demands pre and post COVID, which is I believe that basically any trend, any increase in inequality that we report between 2003 and 2018 is that my instinct tells me that inequality is going to be even larger after we examine those new measures.
Right, but job capacities may also have changed, right? With some people experiencing effects from long COVID and things like that. So,
right, that's how. Yeah, I mean, when you match that with information about with data from health outcomes, that's probably going to play a role as well. We're super interested in doing that. It just we haven't started looking at ONET data, the most recent ONET data, and our measures of abilities. We are planning, like we have like a hopefully an upcoming award that will allow us to actually measure individuals' abilities and more health outcomes in more detail this year or next year. And I think we'll be able to address that question if that happens.
Perhaps I could follow on with that, because it sounds like you're actually starting to address the question that I had. The general finding that you had that average ability, self-reported ability was well above occupational demand across the board. You yourself asked the question, are they overestimating their abilities? And in the literature that I'm very familiar with on perceived knowledge, we see that people generally overestimate their knowledge. They tend to show overconfidence. And have you thought about the ability to check the validity of the self-reports against some sort of objective measure? Maybe that's exactly what you're referring to, but so I'm hoping I'm just setting you up here to talk about some future.
No, not at all. Actually, it's totally great that you asked that question, because we do. I mean, we're planning to. With this data, we don't have objective measures, but that's part of our proposal. That we're basically for each of these abilities, not for all of them, but for most of these abilities, we're planning to collect data we're planning to use the anchors for these questions and translate them into like objective measures, so we can basically have like a parallel world in which we can compare. We can estimate in a way any potential overconfidence. So that's something that we really is part of the plan. But said that, we also match our data with other ALP surveys that measure personality traits and like objective measures of cognition, because personality traits have been reported to be quite correlated with overconfidence or overestimation. So in the estimates that I showed you before about the effect of work capacity on labor market outcomes, if we control for like personality traits, the effects remain pretty much the same. So they are robust to that. They're also robust to observe measures of cognition, which is not perfect, is what we can do at this point. But part of the plan, actually an important part of the plan in this proposal that I talk about, it's about constructing these objective measures so you can actually believe us, fully believe us about that our self-reported abilities make sense or not.
Another finding you might build off of is that there's evidence that confidence and ability correlates more positively across domains than does actual ability. And so there are many places where we've measured confidence on the ALP, and you might be able to make use of that.
Okay.
Until you were just talking.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to write an email after this talk.
Any other questions for Italo?
Yeah.